We're going to continue our talk with the Pennsylvania football historian with some great high school rivalries. Moving a little bit west now, we're going to talk about the Sharon-Farrell rivalry, as well as Aliquippa and Beaver Falls. All the great players that play with them in this great rivalries, coming up with the football historian in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with pigskindispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Now, those of you who've been listening to the show last week or so, you've heard the first two parts of our great conversation that we had with the PA football historian, a great high school football site for the state of Pennsylvania. That's where it really is geared at. It gets in some college and some other things too, but really their forte is talking about great high school football here in Pennsylvania. And we had the fortunate days to have some great conversation with the PA football historian on the rivalries based on a poll that he had come out recently on Twitter, and it had some great results come back, and he is just a wealth of knowledge and information. And we were able to cover about 10 of these great rivalries throughout the state. And today it moves a little further west here in part 3 as we get to talk about the rivalries of Sharon and Farrell, as well as Aliquippa and Beaver Falls around the Pittsburgh area, on the suburbs of Pittsburgh, with some great athletes that come out of there. So the PA football historian is going to talk to us today. Before we get started in that, just wanted to mention you can find him on Twitter at PA_FB_history. He also has a tremendous website that it can be found at pafbhistoryaltogether.com, pafbhistory.com. And you want to email him, pafbhistory@gmail.com. That's ways to get in contact with him. Make sure you check out his site. Check out the school sites that we're going to throw links to you on Pigskin Dispatch, because they have some great sites too and tell the history in more in detail than during our conversation about each school. And it's worth checking out, because just some tremendous programs in the state of Pennsylvania. And we would love to hear your feedback. If you want to contact us, pigskindispatch@gmail.com, and we'll get back to our conversation with two more great rivalries in Pennsylvania with the PA football historian.
Moving on now, a lot of these games are named, and it's kind of amazing that, to my knowledge, this is the only one in Pennsylvania called the Steel Bowl. This is one you'll know a little bit about. This is District 10 one. It's now a District 10 one. It never used to be. It used to be a Whitfield rivalry, but it's Sharon and Farrell. So these two teams used to be in the Whitfield. They're when you look at how many teams have changed districts in the history of their school across the state of Pennsylvania, there's not a lot of them. And Sharon and Farrell both did. They both left District 7. They both left the Whitfield, and now they've been in District 10 for a while now. But I believe this is the closest, now that Bishop McDevitt still might be closer to Harrisburg than Sharon is to Farrell. But Sharon and Farrell, according to Google Maps, are 2.1 miles apart. You have two teams in the top 50 wins all time in the state. Sharon has 683, Farrell has 627. So, talking about two teams with over 1,300 wins combined. And like I said, it's the only Steel Bowl that I'm aware of in Pennsylvania. Now, Farrell is the Steelers, so that makes a little bit of sense. But lots of steel mills back in the day in that area. But like most of Pennsylvania, there aren't a lot left. But this game was first played 100 years ago. This will be the 100-year anniversary of it, although they've not played 100 times. It was played in 1922 for the first time. Sharon leads 35-26-7, 7 ties. They've not played in almost a decade. They've not played since 2013. And anybody who follows, I'm going to give a shout out to Bob Greenberg, especially. Bob's a radio guy out in the Hermitage, Farrell, Sharon area right there in Mercer County. And every time there's an opening on either of these teams' schedules that might possibly be worked out, he's always all over Twitter saying Steel Bowl. I love that. They're finally starting to play again. District 10 reorganized their regions for this year. And for the first time since 2013, Sharon and Farrell will play this year because for this cycle, this 2022-2023 cycle, they're in the same region. So they're going to play at least the next 2 years and hopefully for many, many more. The cool thing I found about this rivalry, they've played 68 times, Sharon and Farrell. 35 of those 68 games, so more than half of them, have been won by single digits. So you're talking about a rivalry that, you scroll back through and a lot of this information is from the Dr. Roger Saylor files at Penn State that you can find online. Scrolling back through and you're seeing a lot of 7-6, 14-7, 15-14, just really, really tight games. And, we started off the list with a couple rivalries that were pretty one-sided. And, Sharon and Farrell, even though Sharon has a little bit of an upper hand in terms of all-time wins, it's still close. And you think about how many single plays could have changed the outcome of games over time in that rivalry. You're talking about changing 8 or 10 plays. Maybe Farrell leads the all-time series. So that many games that close definitely fits the bill for a rivalry along with everything else.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with this rivalry because when they joined District 10, like you said, I was near my beginning of my officiating career, and they what District 10 did is when they would meet in the playoffs or when they would meet in the regular season, they wouldn't use Mercer County officials because I don't know for those of you that have been in the Hermitage, Sharon, and Farrell, like you said, they're like right on top of each other, and you have 4 really good high schools that are right in that area, because there's Hickory, Kennedy Catholic are right there, probably right in between Farrell and Sharon. And they're all have real strong traditions of great football for smaller schools, usually AA, AAA, that size schools. And they bounce, I think, back and forth. Like you said, they're changing regions all the time, but just a tremendous thing. But I can remember one game we went down there for the playoffs and I worked, and it started off, it was probably 70 degrees. And we started the games. We're in short sleeve shirts working the game. Before it even got halftime, it was like a freezing rain. It dropped like 30 some degrees and it was snowing by the end of the game. And, I think we played on Farrell's field too. So it was before everybody was playing on turf in the playoffs, but just a tremendous rivalry. And these two teams don't like each other, and, and they have athletes, out the wazoo on both sides. They're real strong programs and real well-coached programs throughout the years.
Yeah, you see, I mean, they're both smaller schools. Farrell's very small now. Sharon's not a big school, but Farrell's very small. And it's cool seeing a rivalry coming back where there's been a decade of, man, what could have been. Farrell's been on an absolute tear over the past, say, 8 to 9 years. They've won state titles. They've appeared at state championship games. They've been just excellent. They've had years where it's like every single game is 58-6, and it's no, and that there's not bad football out that way. There's good teams out there. They've beaten Wilmington, who's a bigger school and a very good school that just had the best 4 or 5 year stretch of their school's history. And then Sharon's the same way. Sharon's been excellent. Sharon's, like I said, a little bit bigger of a school, but I mean, you pull these schools together and you might make a 4A school. And you think about the amount of talent that's going to be on the field when they play together. It's just going to be a lot of fun to watch.
And their whole, that whole region down there, that whole Mercer County, all the schools are not very much far off in size, but their programs down there, because you have Mercer and Grove City and like you said, Wilmington. Wilmington's got one of the most strongest programs probably it's the last 50 years. They're just tremendous down there, and just some really good football down there. So I think when Farrell and Sharon came into District 10 and joined that Mercer County League, or the old Mercer County League, it just brought out a whole new brand of football up here our way. And they're really good. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So I guess moving from 2 former Whitfield schools to still Whitfield schools, current, past, and former Whitfield schools. There are going to be a lot of people in Pittsburgh upset with me that there weren't more games added on this list. Lots and lots of games I could have chosen. Based on votes, it was a little bit tight. Lots of people were stumping for Woodland Hills, Penn Hills, which is a tremendous rivalry, two awesome programs. Not the oldest rivalry in the world. Woodland Hills has only existed since the 80s, and that's not why I didn't choose them. But they're also, the Whitfield had the most. I said earlier that I got a lot of submissions for rivalries that either haven't been played in a long time or one of the schools doesn't even exist anymore. And I got a ton of games out of the Whitfield, which makes sense historically. The Whitfield used to have every little town had its own team, and they've merged together over time. So I got Monaca, Rochester for a game. I got a couple involving old Duquesne High School, which ceased to exist about probably 16, 17 years ago, and a few others. So
yeah, I'm sure you probably heard from Thomas Jefferson and Gateway and Central Catholic. They're all
and then like a couple people voted for North Hills, North Allegheny, another awesome game.
Oh yeah.
You can't go wrong in the Whitfield. If I gave you a list of 15 rivalries in the Whitfield and I would have just picked one of them, it wouldn't have been a wrong pick. There's just people saying no, this one would have been better. Not that one's bad. This one would have been better. But in the end, I chose to go with Aliquippa, Beaver Falls. Both of these schools are both in Beaver County, relatively close to each other. Two teams in the top 20 in the state in all-time wins. Aliquippa has 756 wins. Beaver Falls is approaching 700. They have 685. They haven't played all the time, but when they do, you're talking about outstanding talent on the field, great games. It's a cliche, and I hate to bring it up because I feel like it's a broken record thing to talk about. But if you're going to talk about, if you want to tell somebody from Kansas about Pittsburgh football, I don't think you're going to go wrong showing them an Aliquippa Beaver Falls game, because Beaver Falls field, to my knowledge, I think they still play on grass. I might be wrong there. They do. I think they do play some games at Geneva College, so they'll play on turf there. Sorry about that. But we're talking about two teams who play steel mill football, for lack of a better term. And I think that's something that, again, there are very few steel mills left in the Pittsburgh area. But if you're going to talk about that stereotypical Western Pennsylvania steel mill rivalry idea, Aliquippa and Beaver Falls fits that really well. We got a couple submissions for Clareton games. I think it was Duquesne Clareton was one of the submissions. That would have fit perfectly too. Chose not to go with Duquesne just because, again, it hasn't existed in a while. But Aliquippa Beaver Falls fits the bill on that. They first played in 1920, and somehow they've only met twice in Whitfield finals, Whitfield championship games over that time. The Whitfield was one of the first, if not the first, parts of Pennsylvania to actually play a true playoff with a championship game. And they've only met twice, and both of them were fairly recent. Aliquippa won the Whitfield final against Beaver Falls in 2008, and Beaver Falls won in 2016. The 2008 game that Aliquippa won, they won 8-6 because they blocked a punt in the fourth quarter that went out of the back of the end zone for safety. So, lots of kind of memorable plays. And like I said earlier, I kind of alluded to this, but when you're talking about the players who've appeared in this rivalry, you're talking about NFL Hall of Famers, at least 4. Now I'm counting one before he's in, but, talking about Mike Ditka, Joe Namath, Ty Law, they're all in. Darrell Rivas will be in someday. And then Sean Gilbert, who was a first-round pick and a really good pro for a long time. That's just 4 of them. I didn't talk about Aliquippa has the majority of those guys. Aliquippa can rival anybody when it comes to NFL name recognition.
But didn't Dorsett play in there too?
Dorsett's from Aliquippa, but he played at Hopewell. So it was like a boundary thing. But yeah, Paul Posluszny's the same way. He's from Aliquippa, but he played at Hopewell. But Tommy Campbell's been in the NFL. Jonathan Baldwin was a first-round pick. So, and a lot of those names, the cool thing, we talked about the Bishop McDevitt Harrisburg game. We could talk about a lot of names that maybe an 18-year-old would know today. We're going back to Mike Ditka. Mike Ditka played for Aliquippa in the mid-50s. And, we can go back a long way, and it feels like you have a consistent bridge of just famous people to play in this game. So a really, really cool thing. Aliquippa leads at 52-32 with 5 ties all time. And as I said, there have been some breaks in this rivalry, and that's because the Whippeal tends to schedule everyone, especially recently. By recently, I mean the last couple of decades. When you run a history site, recently doesn't mean recently the way it does with everybody else. But last few decades, the Whippeal is especially has been scheduling based on classification. And so they won't play again this year because, as I kind of mentioned at the start, the PIAA and Aliquippa they've been going back and forth. Aliquippa won the 4A state title this year with a single A enrollment. Because of the state success factor, they are being pushed to 5A as a single A enrollment school. And Beaver Falls, I believe, is currently still 3A. So they're not going to play this year. And so this is kind of one of those rivalries. It's a little bit in limbo. It's kind of on ice right now. And hopefully there's a way that it can come back soon. The Whippeal doesn't really allow a ton of flexibility in scheduling, but if they could just find a common bye week and make this happen, I think it'd be a great thing to bring back annually because it's been a tremendous rivalry when they have played.
Well, where there's a will, there's a way, because the next one you're going to talk about, until this upcoming year, they haven't been in the same classification, but they found a way to play every year. Mm-hmm. And it's one I'm real familiar with. So hopefully Aliquippa and Beaver Falls can find a way, and some of these other rivalries that finds ways to play each other. And usually they have a week where they can play anybody, the independent games, I guess, non-region games. And hopefully they can do that. All right, we're going to cut it off right there, and we're going to continue and finish up this series in part 4, which is going to come out Friday, April 29th, here on PigskinDispatch.com and wherever you find the Pigskin Dispatch daily podcast. And, we have a tremendous time, a great conversation we're having here. We're going to cover those last 2 big rivalries that came up on the top list here that we got to have. And there's a plethora more of great rivalries in Pennsylvania we can talk about. And I think we may even schedule some more shows with the PA football historian to do so, because we're just scratching the surface here of the great football that's played in the state. But again, I wanted to mention the Twitter account is at PA_FB_history, and it's PAFBhistory.com is a website. PAFBhistory@gmail.com is his email. So make sure you check that out, and make sure you check out us each and every day as we bring you more and more football history at every level and every nook and cranny of the world, and here on PigskinDispatch.com. So we hope you'll check us out tomorrow. And until then, have a great Gridiron Day. That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, PigskinDispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. PigskinDispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandham at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.